I wasn't invited to my sister's engagement party because her fiancé's family was too prestigious. 6 months later, his dad shook my hand at a gala, then realized I owned the company sponsoring the event. Now they're all calling me, but I let it ring. Hi Reddit, I'm 40M, and let me tell you, family drama hits differently when you're the quiet one everyone overlooks, until they don't. I don't post often, but this story's been sitting on my chest for months now. Every time I think I've moved past it, something reminds me just how deep those wounds go. This isn't just about an engagement party. It's about years, decades, of being treated like a second-class citizen in my own family. Let me start from the beginning. I'm the oldest of two. My younger sister, Celia, 36F, has always been the star. You know the type. Long lashes, perfect posture, the kind of smile that makes teachers forgive missing homework and neighbors ask if she's available to babysit. My parents, Martin and Lillian, treated her like a gift to the world. Me? I was fine. I didn't get in trouble. I kept my grades up, and I was quiet. Too quiet, apparently, because they never seemed to notice I had needs too. From as far back as I can remember, everything revolved around Celia. When she took ballet, we all had to go watch. Every Saturday. When she had science fairs, I was volunteered to help her build her projects, even though I had my own schoolwork to do. When she wanted to redecorate her room in high school, my college funds somehow got reallocated. Not all of it, but enough that I had to work nights to make up the difference. They always had a reason. It's just this once. She's still young. You'll understand when you have your own kids. But here's the thing, I did understand. I understood perfectly. They didn't see me. By the time I hit my late 20s, I learned not to expect much from them. I moved out, moved on, and kept my distance. I started my own business, tech consulting, software licensing, and eventually full-scale product development. I kept it quiet. To most of my family, I still just work with computers. No one ever asked me the details, and I never offered. I guess part of me liked being underestimated. Celia, meanwhile, was climbing her own ladder. Social events, charity boards, those kinds of circles. She dated a string of guys who all seemed cut from the same expensive cloth suit jackets that fit too well, cars with names instead of brands. Then came Roland. I met Roland twice before the engagement. The first time was at a family dinner. He barely spoke to anyone who didn't fit his social tier. The second time was at my parents' anniversary party. He shook my hand like he was doing me a favor, asked me where I went to school, then immediately launched into a story about his collegiate network without waiting for an answer. That told me everything I needed to know. Still, I kept it cordial. I didn't want to be the bitter older brother who couldn't be happy for his sister. I told myself, let it go. You don't need their approval. Then came the engagement announcement. My parents were over the moon. Roland had proposed during some garden weekend at his family's estate, apparently. There was a group message with a photo of Celia's hand and a caption about finally joining two legacies. I wasn't sure what that meant. Our family isn't exactly a legacy unless you count decades of passive-aggressive dinners and choosing favorites. I sent my congratulations and figured I'd get more details later. Weeks passed. My mom kept gushing about the upcoming engagement party. Oh, it's going to be elegant. Nothing like those loud functions people throw nowadays, she said on the phone. Very tasteful. Exclusive guest list, you understand. At first, I didn't think much of it. Celia was always into image. This sounded on brand. But then I noticed something. I never got an invite. No paper one. No email. No text. Nothing. It bugged me, but I didn't want to assume. So I brought it up, casually, during dinner with my cousin Marina, who had received an invite. She gave me a strange look. Wait, you're not going? I just figured you were busy or traveling. I mean, Celia said the guest list was being kept tight because Roland's family is, particular. There it was. I drove home that night with my hands gripping the steering wheel tighter than I meant to. I replayed every birthday I missed so I could meet deadlines. Every gift I'd sent with no thank you. Every time I'd been told to be understanding because Celia was going through a lot. I called my mom the next morning. Hey, just wondering, did something happen with the engagement party? I never got an invite. There was a pause. Oh, well, sweetheart, it's just that Roland's family is very image conscious. They wanted to keep the event very curated. Curated? Yes, just the right kind of people. It's not personal. It's just how these things are. Not personal. Just that I didn't make the cut. I hung up. I didn't argue. What was the point? They'd made it clear, without ever saying the words out loud, I wasn't polished enough, impressive enough, important enough. So I made a decision. I wouldn't beg to be included. I wouldn't confront Celia. I wouldn't show up uninvited and make a scene. Instead, I went back to my life. My real life. The one none of them had bothered to ask about. The one I'd built on my own, brick by brick, while they all played dress-up with legacy and reputation. And then, about a month ago, I received an invitation to a black-tie charity gala in the city. A big one. The kind where tickets cost more than my parents spent on their last car. My company, quietly, through our foundation, had been a silent partner for years, funding scholarships and tech programs for underprivileged schools. We never attached my name to it. We preferred to keep the spotlight on the mission. The gala was celebrating a new milestone, a multi-million-dollar expansion of one of our initiatives. My name still wasn't on the guest list in a flashy way, but I'd be there. I always went. I arrived in a standard black tux, nothing flashy. I kept to the edges of the room, as usual, just observing. That's when I saw him, Roland's father. He was talking to a group near the bar, laughing that too loud laugh rich men have when they think they're the most interesting person in the room. I almost turned and walked away. Almost. But then he walked up to me. "Excuse me," he said, offering a firm handshake. "Are you with the Langford Tech Initiative?" I shook his hand and nodded. "Yes. I'm involved with the foundation." That was when the director of the program spotted us. "Oh, perfect timing. Mr. Merrick," he said to Roland's father, "this is the man I was telling you about. The one who made all this possible. The founder of the Langford Tech Initiative." Roland's father turned back to me slowly. "You." I smiled. Politely. Calmly. "Yes. Me." That's when things started to unravel. There I was, standing at the gala in that moment of silence, Roland's father staring at me like he'd just discovered a ghost in his mirror. He blinked, adjusted his tie, and tried to recover. "Well?" "I had no idea," he said with a stiff chuckle. "Your name wasn't listed in the program." I just nodded. "That's by design. I prefer the work to speak for itself." He gave a slow, shallow laugh, the kind people use when they're not sure if they're being mocked. And then, because men like him can't help themselves, he said, "It's quite a surprise. Roland never mentioned anyone in your family being in this sort of position." That part, I believed. I was polite, kept the conversation brief, then excused myself and drifted away. The room buzzed on, unaware that the man who'd once seen me as unimportant had just had a revelation drop into his lap like a lead weight. Later that night, I checked my phone. Missed calls. My mother. Celia. Marina. Even an unfamiliar number, probably Roland. No voicemails, just that ringing silence that people leave when they don't know how to say, "We've made a mistake." I didn't return any of the calls. Instead, I drove home slowly, through streets that still held pieces of my past. The same city where I'd once sat in borrowed clothes at Celia's high school award banquet because my parents had forgotten I'd been recognized the same day for my science fair win. The same place where they hosted her graduation party in a rented hall while mine had been a backyard barbecue where half the guests were people I didn't know. I wasn't bitter. Not exactly. But I remembered. The next morning, my phone lit up again, my mother this time. I stared at the screen until it went dark. 5 minutes later, a text came through. "Can we talk?" "I think there's been a misunderstanding." No, there hadn't. Another text came, this time from Celia. "Hey, can we meet?" I didn't know everything. Please. Didn't know everything? That was rich. Celia knew exactly what she was doing when she left me off the guest list. She always knew. She knew when she borrowed my laptop in college and never gave it back. She knew when she cried to our parents about needing extra support while I paid my own rent at 19. She knew. Still, I waited. I didn't respond. I let the silence do what words never could. 2 days passed. Then Marina called. Marina, my cousin, the only one in the family who had ever spoken to me like a person rather than a placeholder. I answered her call. "I figured you'd finally pick up," she said, her voice low. "What happened at the gala?" "My aunt and uncle are in a tailspin. Your mom called mine crying." "Well, fake crying. You know how she gets." I sighed. I didn't do anything. I just existed. That was apparently enough. Marina laughed softly, bitterly. "I told Celia years ago not to treat you like a background character. She didn't listen. Now she's desperate to fix things, but it's not because she cares. It's because Roland's family suddenly thinks you're valuable." There it was. Not family. Not love. Not included. Valuable. That word hit me differently. Because for the first time, I wasn't being seen as someone to manage or overlook. I was being calculated. I thanked Marina for the honesty and ended the call. She meant well, but I needed space. Later that evening, my mother showed up at my building. Yes, she actually came. The front desk called up, asking if I was expecting a Mrs. Mather. I told them to tell her I wasn't available. I watched from the window as she stood in the lobby, looking around as if unsure how she got there. 10 minutes later, another text. I was just trying to protect Celia's future. You have to understand how sensitive these social things are. That message stayed unread in my notifications for days. The thing about villains is, they often don't realize they're the villain. They think they're being strategic, or helpful, or that their vision of what's best should override everyone else's. My mother wasn't cruel with words. She was cruel with silence, with exclusion, with veiled excuses and subtle choices. And now, for the first time, she had to sit in the quiet. I didn't know them an explanation. I didn't know them forgiveness. But I still hadn't made a decision about what would come next. Because what none of them knew, not Roland, not Celia, not even my parents, was that I wasn't done yet. The gala had only been the first public sign of who I really was. The days following the gala were quiet, at least from my end. My phone kept lighting up, missed calls, texts, even a few emails. I didn't respond to any of them. I didn't block anyone, though. I wanted them to feel that silence. That uneasy, heavy quiet where you start to wonder not just what someone's thinking, but when they're going to act. In their world, everything moved fast. Plans, parties, damage control. But I'd learned long ago that the most effective moves aren't loud. They're precise. And I was ready. See, Roland's father was a board member of an investment firm. One of those sleek, marble floor places with portraits in the hallway and a website filled with buzzwords. They'd recently taken interest in the education technology space, the very sector my company specialized in. I knew they were circling our industry because a colleague had quietly mentioned it at the gala. What no one on that board knew, not even Roland's father, was that I had just finalized a quiet acquisition of a mid-sized platform they'd been preparing to court. They thought they'd be first in line, but the ink had dried 2 weeks earlier, under a different company name, one of mine. That was part one. Part two, that was the event. The Education Expo was an annual affair, large-scale, high-profile, and media-covered. Think polished booths, tech demos, carefully staged interviews. That year, I was invited as a keynote speaker. My name was now attached, no more hiding behind company shells. I accepted. It was a calculated risk. I hadn't been public about my work for a long time. I like my privacy. But there are moments where you have to step into the light, not for applause, but to remind certain people that they were never looking high enough. The expo landed 3 months after the gala. Plenty of time for them to twist themselves in knots. Celia texted me 4 times that month, each one more curated than the last. Hope you're doing well. We should catch up soon. Roland mentioned your foundation. That's amazing work. We'd love to talk when you have a minute. No pressure. Mom's been really upset lately. I think she misses you. I never answered. They missed the version of me that stayed in the corner. The version that sent polite gifts and RSVP'd, yes, even when I wasn't wanted. That version was gone. When the day of the expo came, I arrived early. The stage was simple, tasteful. My presentation wasn't flashy. I spoke about long-term equity in education, about bridging tech gaps in underserved districts, and about how building something of value starts when no one's watching. I didn't mention my family, but when the crowd stood to applaud at the end, I spotted them. Celia, Roland, my parents, sitting in the 3rd row. Their faces were hard to read, especially my mother's. It wasn't quite pride. It wasn't joy either. It was something between confusion and discomfort. Like the image of me in their heads was being redrawn in real time, and they didn't quite recognize the person on stage. Afterward, there was a reception. I knew they'd wait for me there. And they did. My mother was the first to approach. She smiled, small, nervous. Your speech was lovely. You've built something really impressive. I nodded. Thank you. A pause. Then, the question she couldn't hold in. Why didn't you ever tell us? I looked at her for a long moment. Not with anger. Just clarity. Because you never asked. Before she could respond, Celia stepped in. She had that polished look she always wore in public, but her eyes gave her away. They darted, scanning faces, like she was hoping no one important had seen what just happened. I didn't mean to leave you out, she said quickly. The engagement party, it was more Roland's family. They had expectations, and I didn't know how to say no. You didn't try, I said quietly. You chose to erase me because it was easier than standing up for me. Roland joined then. He nodded curtly. It's unfortunate how things played out. But now that we're all here, maybe it's time to start fresh. I met his gaze. You're not really the one to offer that. He flinched. Not much, but enough. I let the silence hang. Just long enough to make it clear this wasn't a reconciliation. This wasn't a tearful family reunion. This was a reckoning. And I wasn't done. Because the platform I'd acquired, it was being rolled out in over 200 schools that year. With press coverage. With a name, my name, attached. And Roland's father's firm? They were out of the running. Quietly. Efficiently. I'd made sure of it. They had no seat at the table now. But the best part? They were starting to realize it. I turned back to my family and gave them a small, polite smile. The kind I'd seen them wear for years. The kind that didn't quite reach the eyes. I've got other people to talk to, I said. Enjoy the evening. And I walked away. Not angry. Not triumphant. Just free. Of course, I wasn't finished. Not yet. There was one more piece left. One more move to make. The night of the expo marked the last time I saw them in person. After I walked away from my family at the reception, I didn't look back. I stayed for a while longer, spoke with educators, investors, and nonprofit leaders. People who had supported my work not because of a last name, not because of social status, but because they believed in what I was building. The contrast was glaring. Over the next few weeks, everything moved forward as planned. The platform I'd acquired, now under my company's flagship branding, launched in early spring across the school districts we'd targeted. It was a quiet revolution, effective, streamlined, and built from the ground up to reach the students most often left behind. The media coverage came slowly at first, then picked up speed. A few national articles featured the story of the founder who'd spent years working behind the curtain, only to emerge with a project that was changing how underserved schools access technology. My name was there, this time by choice. Not for attention, but for accountability. And that's when the messages started again. Celia wrote me a long email. It started out with the usual, I've been thinking about everything, and I realize now how I may have hurt you. But instead of taking real responsibility, she focused on how things had spiraled out of control and how families go through phases. She wanted to meet up. Start fresh, she said. Just us. No parents, no pressure. I didn't respond. My mother sent a card. A physical card. Cream-colored envelope, careful handwriting. Inside was a short note, signed simply. Proud of what you've become. Hope we can reconnect. No apology. Not even an acknowledgement of what she'd done. Just that vague, hollow sentiment. Hope we can reconnect. That was never going to happen. And Roland? He tried to reach out through LinkedIn. Sent me a connection request. The message read, I think we got off on the wrong foot. There may be ways for us to work together down the line. Let me know if you're open. I stared at that request for a full minute before declining it without a word. I wasn't open. Not to him. Not to any of them. Because here's the truth. Some bridges don't need rebuilding. Some bridges were never built on solid ground to begin with. They were rope and plank illusions, held together by guilt, silence, and the hope that you'd never realize you could swim across the river yourself. And once you do, you never go back. I never forgave them. I didn't have to. Instead, I gave myself permission to stop hoping they'd change. I stopped reaching out, stopped waiting for an invitation, stopped explaining my worth. I focused on the people who had shown up, colleagues who believed in me when no one else did, friends who didn't care what my last name was, educators and families who gave me their trust. And for the first time, I built a life where I wasn't constantly looking over my shoulder. I hired a small team to help manage public relations, not to boost my image, but to filter out distractions. I let my work speak for itself. I traveled more. I funded 2 more scholarships under a quiet alias, one of them named after a middle school teacher who once told me I'd go far, even when my own parents didn't show up to the science fair. That's the life I have now. As for my family, they faded out. After a while, the calls stopped. The texts came less often. Marina kept in touch, occasionally sending updates, mostly shaking her head at the stories she still heard from them. But even she respected the boundary. She never pushed. Celia got married that fall. I wasn't invited. Funny how it doesn't bother me anymore. Because the truth is, I was never mourning the loss of them. I was mourning the version of me who kept trying to earn their love. That version is gone. And what's left is someone they never expected. Not bitter. Just whole. and still letting the phone ring. But let me be clear, this wasn't just about proving something to them. It never really was. That was the mistake I made when I was younger, thinking that if I succeeded enough, achieved enough, they'd turn around and finally see me, accept me, maybe even love me. But that's the trap, isn't it? You climb a mountain hoping someone at the bottom will cheer, only to realize they were never looking up to begin with. So I stopped climbing for their applause. And I started building for those who were watching, for the kids in overcrowded classrooms who don't get second chances, for the educators scraping together resources because no one with power had cared, for the students like me who knew what it felt like to be invisible at your own dinner table. My company expanded into 3 more countries last year. We partnered with a literacy initiative that's now in 50 school districts. I met with government officials, sat across from people who once dismissed me, smiled when they asked how I'd managed to grow so quickly. I told them the truth. I stopped wasting time asking people to believe in me. There's a strange peace in letting go of people who never clapped when you were winning. My parents didn't call when the news coverage started, didn't write when we opened our first international office. My mother, who once said I should stick to safe, stable careers, never reached out again, not even when I was listed in a top innovators piece that made the rounds in her social circles. And Celia? From what Marina told me, she's trying hard to polish her image. The prestigious family she married into hit some financial snags. Roland's father stepped down from the firm after a misstep involving a failed acquisition, one I may or may not have had a hand in complicating. Nothing dramatic, just careful redirection. A few conversations with the right people, a couple of strategic partnerships rerouted. That kind of thing. They'll never prove anything. But they know. They know. And that silence? That quiet knowledge sitting in their homes while I continue to move forward? That's worth more than any apology they never gave me. These days, I keep my circle small. I spend weekends walking through bookstores, attending small local talks, mentoring a few bright students who remind me of myself. I don't wear my success on my sleeve. I don't need to. It follows me not as noise, but as quiet proof that I build a life on my own terms. A life where no one gets to decide whether I'm worthy. A life where I no longer ask to be seen. Because I am. Not by them, but by everyone who truly matters. And that, finally, is enough. So, I guess this is where I ask, am I the bad one here? Was I too harsh for cutting them off completely? For not giving them a chance to apologize, even if it was half-hearted? Should I have picked up the phone, replied to the messages, or shown up to Celia's wedding just to keep the peace? Part of me wonders if I should have handled things differently. But the other part, the one that spent years trying to earn a seat at a table that was never set for me, feels like I finally did what was best for my own sanity. I didn't scream. I didn't throw tantrums. I didn't seek revenge in any theatrical way. I just left, quietly, fully, and I built something better for myself. But I know family dynamics can be complicated. Maybe some of you see things I don't. What would you have done? Honest opinions welcome. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories like this one. Thanks for watching.